I'll call this meeting of Sylvania City Council for March 1st, 2021 to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mrs. Cappellini?
Here.
Mr. Fry?
Here.
Mr. Hainum?
Here.
Mr. McCann?
Here.
Mr. Richardson?
Here.
Ms. Stowe?
Here.
Mrs. Westfall?
Here.
All 7 members of council are present, therefore a quorum does exist. Mr. Sanford is in council chambers. Are there any people in the chambers, Bill?
There's no one here, Mr. Mayor, just checking myself.
Okay, well, you're both somebodies. That counts. With that, we'll move on to Pledge of Allegiance, this meeting led by Mr. Fry.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Additions to the agenda. I would like to add as agenda item 13 a discussion of the downtown plan and the steps moving forward from here. We'll make the executive session for the discussion of sale of real estate, agenda item 14, or whatever turns out to be the last agenda item. Mr. Fry, do you have any additional items?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Any items from members of City Council?
Do we have a COVID update?
Yes, we can do that. Let's put that early in the agenda. We'll do that right after approval of the meeting minutes. So that'll be agenda item 4A. Any additional items? Mr. Sanford?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Schroyer?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Chief Snore?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Aller?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
And Mrs. Brining?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, that means that the executive session will be agenda item 14. And with that, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries and the agenda for this evening's meeting is approved as amended. Agenda item 4 is the approval of the meeting minutes from our last meeting on February the 16th. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move adoption of the meeting minutes for council's meeting on February 16th, 2021 as submitted.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the meeting minutes from February 16th, 2021 be approved as submitted. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries and those meeting minutes are approved. Added agenda item 4A is a COVID update. I know that Chief Snore has some updates for you. We have a couple of officers affected now, so I'm going to go to you, Chief, first for your report.
Thank you, Mayor. At this point, we do have 2 officers who are off the roster due to being COVID positive. Both those officers are assigned to the afternoon shift. We don't have any indication that there was any other officers exposed, and one of the 2 officers should be back on the schedule in the next 2 days. Both of the officers were displaying pretty mild symptoms. One of them was losing the sense of taste. That was about the only symptom he had. So they're both doing okay with the positive diagnosis, and one of the officers should be back. Actually, one is back today, and one is back in 2 days after the 10-day isolation.
Thank you. Mr. Aller, any further report on city employees?
No, Mr. Mayor. We haven't had any other cases in the service department. We do have an employee that is waiting for a test for his children. but he himself does not have it, and we haven't had any other cases. So.
We continue to have city facilities locked, but open to the public by appointment. My office is not receiving any complaints about that. Mrs. Booker, I haven't heard any complaints come through you either about access to City Hall or other city facilities.
That is true.
Okay. An issue that has changed a little bit based on the governor's meeting last Thursday, the 10-person limitation is now considered a guideline rather than a rule. And if we stretch the rules a little bit, we can have indoor assemblies up to 25% of total capacity. Capacity in the council chambers is around 100, maybe a little bit more. So we can certainly go back and do that if council chooses to go to hybrid. We talked about doing it for tonight, but we hadn't heard anyone anxious to get back. I talked to the president of council about it earlier today, and we thought maybe the first meeting in April would be a good time to revisit it, but you can have your input now. I think legally we can come back to city council chambers. Today's report from the governor and on the network news shows that even though new cases have dropped about 75%, they are plateauing right now, and we're not sure where they're going to go. The big news in Ohio is that available doses of vaccine are way up. There's like 450,000 available in Ohio this week. And he's, beginning Thursday, is going to broaden the eligible to everybody 60 and over. That might affect a few of you. I know that I had mine. I'm in the higher age group, and I get my second dose a week from Friday. The more people that are vaccinated, the better we'll feel about it. We did check with other political subdivisions in Lucas County last week, and most are still totally virtual, though Maumee is partially hybrid. I guess some people are meeting in their council chambers. So what's your pleasure?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I've got one vaccine in the arm. I'll have my second booster by March 15th. I've actually, I think this way of meeting has been effective, but, I think there's, at an appropriate time, we've got to get back to having open meetings where people can come in and look at us in the eye and yell at us when they want to. At times, I think coming soon. I think it's, but I don't think there's any problem with being slow in picking this up. The governor also said that you could have 30% attendance at baseball games in April, and my season ticket group opted out of April. We'll revisit that in May or June and think about going back.
That's for outdoor activities. They're limited to 30% capacity. One of the guidelines that Mr. Fry and I discussed was possibly waiting until Lucas County gets down to an orange level. That may not happen by early April. We're still around 300 cases per 100,000 weekly in Lucas County. It has dropped from up around 800, but it has to get down to below 100 to go down to orange. I know that several churches are basing their decision to go back to people attending church services is when they return to orange. And it's when we left orange and went to red that I moved these city council meetings to totally virtual. But I can't tell you that's going to happen by the first meeting in April.
Well, that's not a bad guideline, and it's also it's an objective standard that we can observe.
I think we should continue to play it by ear, and if there's no objections, we have a meeting 2 weeks from tonight, but then the meeting after that is 3 weeks later then. So 5 weeks from tonight, we might be into a hybrid situation. I don't want to make any big decisions at this point. And we're not receiving any complaints that I'm aware of from the public, and there's nobody in council chambers. I'm sorry, there are 2 somebodies in council chamber tonight, but not members of the public.
Have it on YouTube.
We are on YouTube, Brian?
Yes, and there are 7 participants,
That's great.
including myself.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Chuck might be one of them as well, but there's some public involved there, no doubt about it. All right, any further discussion? Satisfied, Mr. McCann?
Yes, thank you for the update.
Sure. Let's go back and do our scheduled agenda. We're up to agenda item 5, which is proposed ordinance 19, 2021. This is to enter into a first amendment to our public safety dispatch services agreement with Sylvania Township. Chief, I'd like you to get back on here and talk to us about the need for this and your negotiations and your recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor. This, again, is an amendment of the current agreement that we have with Sylvania Township. The necessity for this agreement is based on the resignation of dispatcher Janelle Bernath. She has accepted a position with the city of Perrysburg and is starting that position on March 8th. She is actually already off the schedule. She's on vacation time right now. We're proposing to start this agreement and start services on March 15th. At this point, we are down to 4 dispatchers, and to cover both shifts with 4 dispatchers 7 days a week really isn't feasible. As of the 15th, we would only be maintaining our day shift dispatch operations in addition to records. So as a result, the dispatch center will be open from 7 to 3 on the weekends, on Saturdays and Sundays. And Monday through Friday, it would be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So we would still be maintaining dispatch services on day shift and records functions into the evening during the week in case citizens need copies of reports or to have fingerprints, things of that nature. The major differences in the contract compared to what we have now, the time duration goes from 3 p.m. till 7 a.m. each day. And obviously the cost is different. Our current contract, the cost of dispatch services is $3,500 a month. And this amendment would raise that cost to $11,000 a month based on the call volume on the afternoon shift, which is about 4 times the call volume on the 11 to 7 shift. So those are the major changes. And I would recommend approval of this ordinance based on our operational needs for public safety dispatch in the city.
And how does that work into your budget? Are we at a loss?
We actually are actually about at a break-even point as far as the actual wages and hourly wages. When you figure in benefits and that sort of thing, it probably isn't to the advantage of the city. Slightly. Mr. Aller can probably comment on that a little bit more in depth as far as the cost breakdown. But when we did the math, it's pretty close to what we were paying for our current employees with a lot of the other factors involved there as far as the cost.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Aller, further comments?
Yeah, the chief, excuse me, the chief is right. It's a pretty close comparison with the new fee by covering 2 shifts. So it's still cheaper than what our fees will be when the consolidation comes forward. But from a current standpoint, compared to the township, it'll be pretty close to a break even.
The consolidation is still scheduled for the 4th quarter of this year.
That's correct.
Being discussed pretty regularly with Mr. Aller and others on its own regional council of governments. There has been discussion of a proposal that's come forth from some of the townships who don't want to pay anything. They want to continue their ability not to charge for police dispatching, and they wanted to have it done by a new tax levy or an assessment, both of which would be 2 or 3 times more expensive for the suburbs than doing it by the way that was negotiated and already approved by the COG, which is on the basis of calls for service. And the group has already voted, they did it last week, to stay with the original agreement, which is calls for service. Mr. Aller, you want to jump in there and further comments?
No, I think you've got it. We'll be meeting with them, with the county soon. We're one of the first agencies that will be brought on because of the changes that we've already had with our dispatching. The chief and his staff have had to switch some things over to the county already. And so we're kind of ahead of the curve a little bit, if you will. So we'll be one of the first ones to make that switch when everything's set up.
Very good.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Can you or Kevin or anybody address the, I know we've had a delay here from when we thought we were going to do this switch from what? First of the year to
now it's fourth quarter.
All right. Is that just because we were distracted with COVID issues, or were there problems that we hadn't anticipated in the implementation? Just any thought about that delay?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just from the COVID, just people not being in the office all the time and trying to deal with some of the same people that in the EOC center are going to be the ones driving this cog switch, and they were obviously busy with operations in the EOC with COVID. So I think it's primarily a COVID delay. And they're shooting everything that we're shooting for is actually for a September 1 switch. We've established that as a soft deadline, but that's our goal for them to start switching things over.
Back to the township issue, the new county sheriff has put additional pressure on the townships to pay for the county sheriff's policing services as well. That's not an issue for Sylvania Township. They've had a police levy and their own police force for a long time. So the townships are trying to respond to it. They do not have either police dispatching or policing services in their budgets. They've been getting it for free all this time. So they are facing those issues.
And Mr. Mayor, the townships that we're talking about, I mean, Springfield, Monclova, is Jerusalem one of those as well?
Yes,
it is. They're trying to make a deal with somebody in Ottawa County, I believe. Though, Kevin, you talk about that.
Yeah, they're looking to do something either with Oregon or Ottawa County. They are part of it. They have to find those services. And then it's all of the western townships, Springfield, Monclova, Spencer, Harding, Richfield. And I think I've got Providence. Yeah.
If you ever drive by the Jerusalem fire station out on Route 2 east of Toledo, that's always been a parking lot for county sheriff's patrol cars. They like to have them there, but I don't know how much they're manned there. Okay. We do have Ordinance 19/2021 to approve this First Amendment. This is a safety issue. So, Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce by title only ordinance number 19-2021. authorizing the mayor and director of finance to enter into a First Amendment to the Public Safety Dispatch Services Agreement on behalf of the city of Sylvania, Ohio, with Sylvania Township. I would like to move adoption of ordinance number 19, 2021 as an emergency measure.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance 19, 2021 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries, and ordinance 19, 2021 is enacted as an emergency measure. Moving to agenda item 6 is proposed ordinance 20, 2001. This is to modify our agreement for the provision of natural gas to residential and small commercial customers within the city of Sylvania beginning in May. This is a fairly complex issue, and we're going to first let everybody know, and I'll need a motion to allow Mr. Fry to push away from the table due to his conflict of interest on this particular issue.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. So let the record show that Mr. Fry has pushed back from the imaginary table that we're all at the moment. Yeah, because we may want to call upon his expertise, but first we'll go to the law director to give us the basis of what's going on with the Columbia gas delivery system.
Thank you,
Mrs.
Mayor.
Fry.
The ordinance is to authorize us to enter into an agreement with we have essentially three options, either Constellation or Volunteer. Volunteer is our current supplier, and that contract runs through April 2021, so the new agreement would start in May. What has complicated this issue is back over the summer, Columbia Gas filed a rate increase with the to add the cost of maintaining this transmission line that Volunteer uses to transport the natural gas. We consider that a breach, and that's what those two letters were that I emailed to everybody on Friday. The first was the notice that we received from Volunteer. The second was our response to that notice. We consider that a breach. So we're not sure what their response is going to be to that. So it kind of complicates our negotiations with them if we want to enter into an agreement with them starting in May. They may still be the best supplier. We actually have NOAC as a whole has done this before with First Energy. We were fighting with them about, I believe it was the polar vortex charge. And then we ended up extending our agreement with them. So this is a bit time sensitive in order to get another option for our small commercial and residential customers. We have to have the contracts in, I believe, next week. So that's why we're just asking for your authority. The NOAC communities will meet once we have a response from Volunteer and fully evaluate, and based on Palmer's recommendation, we'll do whatever they recommend as far as the supplier goes.
We are not being singled out on this. This is affecting all NOAC communities.
Correct.
Which is almost everybody in Lucas County and beyond. So
yeah.
Mr. Fry does not work for Columbia Gas. He works for NOAC. And I suppose that we can call upon him for more explanation. He is not at the table right now. If more explanation is necessary, but we do have to complete this legislation tonight.
Mr. Mayor, I'm ready to move forward with the legislation. I don't need to question mark.
All right, Mr. McCann, you are the chair of the Utility Committee. If you don't have questions, I'm ready to proceed as well.
I'm ready to proceed. No questions.
Okay, ordinance 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce by title only ordinance number 20-2021, authorizing the mayor and director of finance to enter into a customer supply agreement for the provision of natural gas to residential and small commercial customers within the city of Sylvania beginning May 2021. I move for passage of ordinance 20-2021 as an emergency measure.
Second.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance number 2021 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 2021 is enacted as an emergency measure. Let Mrs. Booker let the record show that Mr. Fry is rejoining our digital table here. That takes us up to agenda item 7. Agenda item 7 is to accept proposal for engineering services. Mr. Aller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Back in December, council authorized us to seek proposals, letters of interest from engineering firms for the design that we'll need for Delbrook, Dornell, Hollybrook, and Marshall roads within the city. Mr. Shaw and I graded those proposals and decided to negotiate fees with Fishbeck, and they submitted their fee. It was a little higher than what we had in the original estimate, and being this early in the year, plus knowing that we're going to have some additional funds needed for the Monroe Street Bridge over 10 Mile Creek, we went to them and kind of broke it up into 2 phases. The first phase will be for Hollybrook and Marshall, which those are the 2 streets that we plan on doing the earliest, and the amount for that fee will be $88,905, and that's what I'll ask you to ask council to move forward with here in a little bit. That will leave approximately $50,462 remaining on the proposal to be done with for Delbrook and Dornell. That project we're going to hold off until, like I said, later in the year. If we see that some of our capital improvement funds, if some of our other projects come in less than what we'd anticipated and the funding is there, we'll ask you to move forward at that point. Otherwise, we'll just hold that $50,000 over into 2022 and move forward with it at that time. So at this time, I'm asking council to approve an agreement with Fishbeck for the design of Hollybrook Lane and Marshall Road reconstruction in the amount of $88,905 using the capital improvement funds.
Fishbeck has agreed to hold their price for the next phase of the project.
Yes.
What have we used Fishbeck in the past for? This proposal is being made out of their Dayton office, and are you comfortable with that?
Yes, it'll actually be, the proposal came out of their Dayton office, but it's going to be more, they recently purchased Northwest Consultants, who's in Toledo. It'll actually be our their Toledo office that does most of the work.
Northwest Consultants is Ernest Chang's former company located in Sylvania Township.
Yep.
Okay.
Kevin, one question about this is one of the reasons this is high, these are as elevated as they are. Is it because we're basically going to do a complete tear down and rebuild on these roads? Is that what you're looking at, or
it'll be,
is it a mill and fill, or the numbers wouldn't be so high?
Hollybrook and Marshall are they're more of a reconstruction. We have some utility improvements. We have storm improvements. And that's kind of the bigger one of the 2 pieces. because we're doing that primarily in conjunction with the known project, the US 23 interchange project. When that project occurs, we think Hollybrook and Marshall are going to see some additional traffic because of patterns. So we're beefing those up. They're in pretty poor shape now, but we're beefing them up to be more than what they are right now.
Thanks.
And these projects are in the capital budget for the year.
That's correct. The design for them, yes.
Yes. All right, we do have ordinance 21, 2021 to accept the proposal for the first phase. Mrs. Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to introduce by title only ordinance number 21-2021, accepting the proposal of Fishbeck to provide professional engineering services for the Delbrook, Dornell, Hollybrook, Marshall Improvement Project, appropriating funds therefore in the amount of $88,905. I move passage of ordinance number 21-2021 as an emergency measure.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance 21, 2021 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 21, 2021 is enacted as an emergency measure. Moving on to agenda item 8. We have a proposal from the service director for the 2021 sidewalk replacement program. Mr. Aller.
Mr. Mayor, we requested 5 local companies to submit bids on our 2021 program. We had budgeted $25,000 for the program this year. We only had one contractor submit a bid, and their bid was $24,375, and that was from Scott's Quality Concrete right in Sylvania. They were the contractor that did last year's program. We didn't have any issues with them at all. They did a very good job for us last year. So I would recommend award of the program, 2021 sidewalk replacement program, to Scott's Quality Concrete for $24,375. And those funds were included in this year's capital improvement.
And please give us a description of the work to be accomplished this year, Kevin. This is treatment, I believe.
Yes, yeah, these are all associated with tree roots. There are a couple like manholes or valve boxes that are involved, but there were, I'm going to estimate probably about 20 to 25 sites, Mayor, that are being addressed with this. That's a ballpark. I didn't count the total list, but there are several sites throughout town that'll be addressed up.
There was a big sidewalk replacement section on Vicksburg Drive on the other side of the street from me. Those neighbors had no complaints at all about the work that was done. It's in good shape now. I thought it took quite a while, but they didn't complain. So, and it looks good. Okay, we do have ordinance 22, 2021 to award this to Scott's Quality Concrete. Mrs. Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to introduce by title only ordinance number 22-2021, accepting the proposal of Scott's Quality Concrete and awarding the contract for the 2021 sidewalk replacement program to same, authorizing the expenditure for the improvements in the amount of $24,375. I move passage of ordinance number 22-2021 as an emergency measure.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance number 22, 2021 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 22, 2021 is enacted as an emergency measure. That takes us up to agenda item 9, which is proposed ordinance 23, 2021. This is to authorize an agreement, a change to our existing agreement with Zambella Fireworks Manufacturing. Mr. Fry, I'm going to go straight for you on this one. You're the fireworks guy.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Basically, obviously, we all recall that last year we had to push off and cancel the fireworks display on the 3rd, unfortunately, because of COVID. And the conversation that we went through at the time was we would just push the contract back 1 year. And Mr. Sanford and myself and Mr. McMahon and Mr. Turner from the township got together about a week or so ago to chat about this, and we realized that while we talked about it, we really hadn't transacted anything to contract that. So basically, this is trying just to clean that up and make sure that everybody understands that we still have a 3-year contract. The prices didn't change. We just shoved everything back 1 year for this purpose. And Zambelli's fine with it, and I would recommend that we continue to move forward with it.
Anybody else have questions or comments?
So if this is assuming that the 2021 display will happen.
Correct.
Has there been talk of if that doesn't, is it get pushed again, or how does that work?
Basically, we can, if we provide them at least 30 days notice, Patrick, we can basically postpone it again if we would like to. I believe that's the way the language reads. Is that not right, Mrs. Brining?
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Fry. And you can either do it the way the contract reads, or the extension specifically for COVID, we can either extend it further into this year, or we can just apply the 50% that we pay this year to next year's deposit as well. So,
okay. Hopefully we don't have to, and it goes off great.
I think that's a universal thought process, and I do expect, based on where things are headed, that we're probably going to have it, but it may not look like it has in the past either. I mean, it may have a different feel, but hopefully we can still have a celebration.
Dejard would likely have to limit the attendance at Centennial Terrace, perhaps out at Pacesetter Park as well. We discussed this with the chief and with Mrs. Brining. Centennial Terrace will not be in the city by the 3rd of July this year, but it will still be a necessity to work with the Township Police Department as well to handle all the traffic that'll be a result of this. The roads will be parked up with lots of people out there to watch the fireworks, I'm sure. And I think Pacesetter Park will be really busy. The Zadard will have to decide what they're doing with that.
Right.
However, it makes sense at this time to proceed with this change to the agreement with Zambelli Fireworks. Ordinance 23, 2021. Mr. Fry.
This is going to be a deep breath. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce and read by title only Ordinance number 23-2021. Authorizing an agreement with Zambelli Fireworks Manufacturing Company for the Independence Day celebrations on July 3rd, 2021, July 3rd, 2022, and July 3rd, 2023 at Centennial Terrace and Quarry, authorizing the mayor and director of finance to sign an agreement for the fireworks display, which will cost $35,000, ratifying the cancellation of the Independence Day celebration that was scheduled for July 3rd, 2020, authorizing a 50% deposit payment for each year's fireworks display due in February of each calendar year, which will be shared by the city, Sylvania Township, Coca-Cola Corporation, the Sylvania Joint Area Joint Recreation District, and area businesses. I would like to move passage of ordinance number 23-2021 as an emergency measure.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Schroyer, was the deposit paid last February?
Yes, Mayor, it was.
And that's still on balance? We don't need to pay any more money at this time?
Correct.
And of course, this is not the city is the contract holder, but we're not the sole payer. As the title described, we share this cost with others. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. that for passage of ordinance 23, 2021 as an emergency measure. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 23, 2021 is enacted as an emergency measure. Agenda item 10, proposed ordinance 24, 2021, authorizing the donation of L3 equipment to the Sylvania Township Police Department. Chief Snorer, please give a description of the equipment and your logic for donating it to Sylvania Township.
Thank you, Mayor. As everyone might recall, about a year ago, we secured funding for a new camera system, both in-car and the body cameras that we recently purchased this prior year in November. That new system is online and has been implemented, leaving our L3 system, which is over 10 years old. It is old technology. The township is a couple of years behind us. They are with an L3 system as well that we had prior. Our new system is a Motorola product called WatchGuard. And our system was at end of life. Many of the hard drives are no longer functional, along with some of the equipment that we use to make discs, for example. That's kind of on its last legs. But there are several mic packs, the actual microphones that the officers wear that go along with the in-car camera. Some of those are still good, and a couple of the hard drives are good. And Sylvania Township's going to try to get it by with their equipment for a couple of years while they make the decision about body cams and what type of system to replace the cameras in their cars. So the equipment is obsolete to us, and there really isn't much of a market for 10-year-old technology of this type. So we thought it'd be best to assist our partners at the township with this equipment that they might be able to use.
Sylvania Township has been very cooperative with our current dispatch issues, and I think this is an appropriate gesture to the township. We do have any questions from members of City Council? We do have proposed ordinance 24, 2021. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce and read by title only ordinance number 24-2021, authorizing the donation of L3 equipment to the Sylvania Township Police Department, determining said property to be of no further use to the city of Sylvania. And I would like to move passage of ordinance number 24, 2021 as an emergency measure.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance 24, 2021 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 24, 2021 is enacted as an emergency measure. Thank you. Agenda item 11. Are there any committee reports to be made at this time? Switching over to page 2 of our approved agenda, agenda item 12 is committee referrals to be made. Our new agenda item 13 is discussion on the downtown plan that we had the open house for last week, and discussion of plans from here. Mr. Sanford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to talk about the meeting last week that we had, the virtual meeting with environmental design, and wanted to see what comments all council members. I think everyone was in attendance, which was great. We had overall attendance, I believe it was over 60. And that attended. And I think what we want to talk about also is the next steps and where we go from here. And we've got a couple of those things to bring up. Just a quick recap of the meeting. You know, there were concerns that were raised about, there were questions about traffic, type of housing that was going to be available in our downtown area. There were excitement about what could be in our downtown. I will tell you that I've had numerous calls since the meeting. A couple people that could not be at the meeting that wanted the information. We have the tape of the meeting up on our city's website so people can see it. I've scheduled meetings with folks that are interested in either a property or possible development ideas. Actually got calls from 2 different restaurants in the last week about looking for space in our downtown. So there's a lot of buzz right now, and I think what we need to talk about is what are the next steps, and it's usually an approval process to accept something like this. And one of the persons, I ran into a few people in downtown, and one stopped me on the street and just said that he thought it was just very wise that the city was going through a planning process, and it's something that he encourages a lot in his business, and he works with different companies, and just was impressed that the city was taking something like this on and looking at the future and what it would look like. And at the beginning of the meeting, the mayor explained how the city has gone through this about every 10 years to look at things. And Mayor, I'll ask you to talk about the next steps about how you would have council maybe at a future meeting accept the plan. Yes. And a couple of things that were brought up that we talked about earlier about establishing a TIF in our downtown. We've done research, and on that, Leslie's reached out to some other communities, and I know she has done some homework on that, and the possibility of establishing a special improvement district in our downtown, which is also something I think that we need to look at. So I guess maybe this would be a time to open up and see what comments or questions members of council have.
From my perspective, if council is satisfied with the plan, it may be time to have a resolution prepared for the next meeting to approve it. If there are changes you want to be made, we need to hear about those. But I think it's appropriate to make that plan official when you're comfortable doing it. And then I do want to refer to committee the possibilities of a TIF and a SID. And they can serve different purposes. Let's talk about the SID first. That's a special improvement district. That would be a fee added on to property owners' property taxes that could be used to fund the Downtown Business Association, which could take some of the necessity for tax dollars to be on there and put it back on the property owners. It would not be a large assessment, but there is some difficulty with getting 100% participation downtown now, and that would solve that problem. There was a SID in place 24 years ago. It included a much larger area than just the immediate downtown. It came out and got City Hall, it got the library, it got the Burnham Building, and it went east on Monroe Street a little bit. When I became mayor, Jim Sauter came to me and said he was the largest private contributor to that, and it was being used to fund a full-time administrator for the downtown area. And I said, well, if you're not happy with it, circulate a petition and we'll get it off. And we did that. But the time may have come to put another SID on the downtown, and I think we need to consider that. The other, a TIF, you've heard that described by Michelle Johnson. We need to get some more facts and figures put together on that. But a TIF could be used to fund capital improvements in the downtown area. And we're certainly facing a major improvement project for sidewalk improvements and downtown streetscape in the downtown area. In the past, Mr. Aller has alluded to $1 million plus price tag for that. It's a big project. The trees are getting pretty mature. We need to solve ADA problems. And this could be a way to raise funds for a street improvement project in the immediate downtown area. That also needs to be considered in committee. Perhaps these are both should go to a committee of the whole, but I don't think you have to hold up approval of the downtown plan. This could be the next step to discuss those two issues after you're comfortable with the downtown plan and pass a resolution accepting it in in it, whatever form it's in.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
may I propose a third thing to consider?
sure.
When we're comfortable moving forward with the master plan, I wonder if this might be a good time to take a look at our zoning code around the downtown and make sure that that is supportive of the type of development that is within the master plan.
Yes, we've discussed that. You've brought it up, and we've discussed that with Michelle Johnson. Bill, I don't know that we have a quote back from her yet, but we need to look at reviewing our zoning code to make sure we like it. There's issues. One issue we're covering already, it's going to the Plan Commission. Second week of March is bike parking. We could take a look at parking requirements, retail on the first floor, necessity of living units, things like that. Any update on that, Bill?
I know it's that Michelle Johnson did look into that, so I can check back with her, and because she knew that was something that we were looking for.
I know historically when we've done downtown plans before, we have looked at our zoning code and made some changes. One of the big issues that Katie has brought to my attention is an interest in a requirement relating to first floor, I'll say non-office use, retail, commercial, dining, entertainment, foot traffic sort of businesses. Certainly something worth thinking about. I know we've talked about that. Bill, I think, is working with our downtown group to see what, begin to get some input on that. So it's something worth looking at. I think that's worthwhile.
Mr. Fry, you represent us on the Downtown Business Associates. Any comments you'd like to make?
No, I think I've mentioned to the DSA a number of times since I started working with them on their efforts, the possibility of consideration of a SID. There was some interest, but it wasn't anything that was something they really wanted to pursue at that moment in time. But I don't know that there was a full understanding of what exactly that means and meant and would mean for the DSA. So I think educating ourselves. I mean, I have a little bit of understanding of a SID. Most of us probably do. Mayor, you just described it quite well, I think, but it would be helpful to understand that and spend a little time going through that and putting that in front of the public as well, because as you indicated that Mr. Sauter from his business perspective says that he was a pretty large contributor to that. And how would this thing get structured? I don't know all the ins and outs of, is it based upon a percentage, or could it be a specific fee per front footage, or what alternatives is there for this type of charge that might ultimately be considered? And I know it has to go in front of the voters as well, if I recall correctly. So it would help me certainly to make me understand better what that looks like, and obviously the same thing with a TIF, because I've never touched a TIF before at all.
I'm not sure that either one need to go to the voters, but the SID certainly needs to be approved by the property owners downtown, probably by petition. I believe the one before was based on front feet, and that's why Mr. Sauter was paying a large share of it, and it was not benefiting his business. It was not set up to benefit his grocery store, which was doing just fine. So we could look at different ways of doing it. It could be on a per property basis, or a front foot not to exceed a certain number. We need to look at the options.
Right.
But we should certainly include Mr. Sauter in the discussion, and we'll have to set the perimeter for that as well. If you're going to involve the funeral home downtown, they have a lot of frontage as well, and might be important to them. So
Sure.
there's much to be discussed on it.
Right. And as far as the actual plan itself, I can only speak for myself, obviously, but at this point, we've gone through this and seen this, had lots of public hearings. I'm comfortable in accepting the plan, but I'd appreciate hearing from other members of council.
So I think we should go ahead and accept the plan. I think it's been vetted quite a lot. And we definitely need a lot more discussion about the SID and the TIF. Do we need both? I feel like when we talked about the TIF with Michelle, she included that in a TIF, you could also use some of that money to fund the DSA, or maybe I'm wrong about that. But I feel like we need every possible which way it could work. I feel like we need to be careful about overtaxing our business owners.
I like the idea of moving forward as well. I don't think we should delay any longer. I'm encouraged and energized by the fact that people have already reached out to Bill with further questions and interest. I feel like Michelle's done a fabulous job. She's done a great job in all of her public meetings that have really helped our community understand what the vision is. And I think she has made it clear, and administration has made it clear, that this is just a vision, but it really depends on what businesses step forth and step up to become involved in our community. So let's move forward. Why delay?
Perhaps the plan should be a motion tonight to prepare the necessary legislation to approve the plan at the next meeting. And we'll also have Mr. Sanford work with Michelle Johnson to get some quote for our zoning code and perhaps for some guidance on a TIF and or a SID. Does that sound reasonable to everybody?
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, I'll make that motion to ask administration to prepare legislation to accept the downtown master plan at the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to prepare legislation for our next meeting to approve the downtown master plan. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries, and we'll have that legislation ready for you, plus whatever proposals we can get from Michelle in the next 2 weeks.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
One couple quick things just to add on that, and I think thank you everyone for moving forward to accepting the plan. I just wanted to comment that I did think Michelle Johnson did a great job in answering the questions that came from all over the place type of questions in that hour and a half session. In regards to the SID, I have had conversations with the DSA, and part of the interest that they have in it is some businesses are opting out or do not join the DSA, but receive the benefits of the work that DSA is doing. So instead of paying a membership fee, the SID fee would cover the fees to operate the DSA. So that's to, part of the consideration for them. And around this area, who has a SID is Bowling Green, and I have been in contact with them and talked with them, and it works pretty well for them. That's a bigger area, but it's a very functional and works well down there for them. Just wanted to add all that.
I believe downtown Toledo has a SID or two as well, Bill.
Yes, they do. That Toledo does, but that's a little different animal. But they'd be a resource also.
They use theirs for more than just organization. They use it for security as well.
Correct.
All right. If we're ready, I would like to move on to agenda item 14, which is an executive session to discuss this possible sale of real estate. To do that, we need a motion to go into committee of the whole executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I need the clerk to call the roll.
Mrs. Cappellini,
Yes.
Mr. Fry,
Yes.
Mr. Hanem,
Yes.
Mr. McCann,
Yes.
Mr. Richardson,
Yes.
Ms. Stowe,
Yes.
Mrs. Westfall.
Yes.
Vote is 7-0 to go into committee of the whole executive session.
No one is present.
Chuck, ready to return to open session?
Yes, we're all set.
All right. Council has returned from an exec session. I can report that only a discussion of the potential sale of real estate was discussed. No action was taken during that executive session, and there is no action to be taken at this time following the executive session. We are at the end of our council agenda. Chief, I see you're still with us. You do have a funds report in the information items. Anything you'd like to say about those?
Not a whole lot to report, Mayor. The last year was pretty uneventful in the world of seizures. Looking at our different accounts, the 225 are local seizures, like for task force, or if we were to do a drug case in the city, we only brought in $900 and some change. Typically, that could be in the 20 to 100,000 range, depending on what the activity that would be happening in the city or the area of the city. If a drug transaction were to happen in the city, even if the funds were in another location, the court fines were down as well. As far as federal equitable sharing, that would be our relationship with the Secret Service. We brought in no money this year for 2020. And then on the back page, seized funds, or a lot of times this is like money that was lost and found, that type of thing, and no owner, a total of $62.53. So not a whole lot to report on, but it is required. So every year we compile these numbers.
Any questions for the chief? No action is needed for this, just questions for the chief. We do this annually. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, we are at the end of our agenda. If there's no further business, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries, and the city council is adjourned until its next regularly scheduled meeting 2 weeks from tonight on Monday, March 15th at 7:30 p.m. Thank you all for attending, and thank you, Chuck, for your work to help with the Zoom and the YouTube tonight. Good night.